This is All the Right Marketing, a publishing podcast by Cardinal Rule Press. Now, here's your host, Maria Dismondy.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today on All the Right Marketing. My name is Maria Dismondy. I'm your host, and I have a wonderful guest here today. What do we do on this podcast? We talk all things books. We talk with business owners, whether they are publishers, booksellers, librarians, but we also talk with creatives, whether they are aspiring writers or published writers. And today's guest is Sophia Lee. She grew up in the Philippines. She wanted to be many things growing up: a doctor, teacher, ballerina, ninja, spy, wizard, journalist, and a lawyer. She likes to think she can still be all these things and more through writing. Love that. She is the author of Soaring Saturdays, What Things Mean, which we're going to learn more about on how that was a 2014 Scholastic Asian Book Award Grand Prize winner, and her newest book, Holding On. She has another picture book titled Lolo's, right? Lolo's Sorry Store, forthcoming from Atheneum in the summer of 2023. She is an MFA in writing for children and adults from the new school in New York City, and works as creative writing instructor for kids, teens, and sometimes grown-ups too. You can learn more about her at sophialeewrites.com, and we will have lots of links in the show notes. So welcome, Sophia. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Maria. It's great to be here. I'm so excited to talk all things books with you. Just share ideas. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. And I hear that you were a curious child in a house full of grown-ups, and there's a term for that, like the term of being nosy in Filipino. What is that term?
Yeah, so that term is chismosa. And I think, it's also very close to like what the Spanish term would be. So it's like a word to mean kind of gossipy. And I wasn't particularly gossipy, but I was very curious as a child, and so
curious, Sophia,
yeah,
that you would
curious.
Sophia,
right.
so curious that you would sit underneath a table when grown-ups were talking so that you could tune into what they were talking about, correct?
Yes, exactly. I wanted to get the real deal of what grown-ups talked about when they didn't think children were there, and I think I learned a lot about that. Learned a lot about life underneath those tables.
And at what point did you come here to the US?
So I came here in 2016 to do my MFA at the new school. And then I've been lucky. I graduated in 2018, and I've been lucky to be able to stay and work since then. And so I've been teaching and also writing, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
That's wonderful. So let's go back to, I believe 2014 was the time when your first book came out, correct?
No, so that was the time when my first manuscript was acquired.
Okay.
And it went through, I know a lot of writers have different paths to publications. I started out as a student. And then I had a teacher, my teacher in this class called Writing for Young Adults, had us, kind of write a manuscript from start to finish in a semester. And when I was done, she just kind of tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, "Hey, Sophia, I don't know if you know this, but I feel like I should tell you, you're really good." And I think this book that you wrote is really good, and I think more people should see it. And she gave me information about this competition that's sponsored by Scholastic in Asia called the Scholastic Asian Book Award, which is an initiative to have more Asian stories out in the world. And if you get chosen, you get the opportunity to be published by Scholastic.
Huge honor, right?
Yeah, and it comes with a pretty substantial cash prize as well. And I joined really more because I felt bad. I didn't want to have to tell my professor. I didn't feel confident enough to submit it. So I just wanted to say, if I met her again and she asked me, yes, I did. I did submit that thing you wanted me to submit. And then it won. Like that was the first thing that I had finished. And then it won the grand prize and then in 2014 and it went on to be published in 2016.
That is wonderful. So
Yeah.
when did you submit? Was it 2013?
2014, I think the summer of 2014 I
So
submitted
it
it.
happened really fast then. And then it just kind of snowballed. So then your first book came out in 2016.
Yes.
And
And
what
then
and then what about your book Soaring Saturdays? Who is that book with?
so that's Soaring Saturdays is also by Scholastic Asia. And I think, we had submitted that right after What Things Mean came out. And I was very lucky because people were really excited about that book. So it had a successful run. Like I think it sold out its first print run within the first 6 months, and then the second print run kind of similarly, like went quickly after that. And so it wasn't a big push for us to kind of show them, hey, I have this picture book. It's also about the Philippines, and they very graciously accepted it. And sadly, it came out in 2019, right before the pandemic hit, and so it's not gotten the same traction as What Things Mean has. But I've been getting really lovely notes from parents everywhere who have read it to their kids, especially it's about people who write letters to each other, and so I think that that's been a nice touch point for people who are missing their loved ones and who haven't seen them in a while.
Well, and really that coming out right before the pandemic, that is what a lot of us did, is we would call each other and write each other letters. And so the timing actually was pretty unique. So we were kind of having a chit chat before we started recording. And, one of the big things we want to talk about on this podcast is the marketing aspect of picture books, especially because when you go into writing, you do not go into writing to be a salesperson. You do not go into writing to be this marketer who says, buy my book. It just doesn't feel authentic. And I think that's why I started this podcast, is because I wanted writers to hear unique ways that other writers and other publishers are getting these messages into the world. Because how do you sell a book when you really don't want to be in sales and you don't want to be in marketing? And a big answer that's coming out of these interviews is community. And that was a similar answer to what you had spoken about. So let's talk about that door. Tell me about the door you said. A lot of Filipinos like to open the door so others can
Come through. And I think that's kind of what happened with my book, with all of my books actually. So when the Scholastic Asian Book Award came out, we were really excited about it. But at the same time, I knew that I didn't have the mechanism to kind of like promote it, out. And but I did have a huge extended family. I had a huge network of friends who were really excited, and I think word about me winning the award spread out organically, because people were just naturally excited. Like my aunts and my cousins and my friends would be calling anyone who they knew who had like remote connections in media. They'd be like, hey, maybe you're interested to talk about this thing, and it's the first Filipino book to win this award. And that way we got so much great coverage. I was interviewed like prime time on like one of the national news networks. And I had like a feature on Cosmopolitan Philippines, like things that I could only really dream about. But it was because people were so gracious with their time and, with their networks. And they were just really excited to kind of spread the word around, especially, I guess, because there aren't a lot of Filipino titles that, you don't see a lot of them making it out into the international market in this way. And that's why they were all like, we have to support this. It's one of ours.
Yeah.
and I always am hopeful, and that's also why I kind of, especially now, push harder to 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 get the word out about my book, because I'm always hopeful that it'll pave the way for someone else to come
Mhm.
after me. That if a Filipino book does well in the market, then publishers will be more likely to pick up another one, even if it's not my book. It's, because I think more of our stories should be out there. I think we
Mhm.
deserve space on that international bookshelf, and be able to tell our stories.
Now, I have a question. Is the book Holding On, is that book translated in Filipino?
So it isn't. It's written in English. My hope is that it will be translated in Filipino
Absolutely.
um sometime in the future. For right now, it is just in English.
Okay. And let's talk about the book coming out next summer, Lolo's Sorry Sorry Store. Tell me about that story.
Okay, so Lolo Sari Sari Store is also inspired by my own childhood memories, kind of like the same way that Holding On is. Um, in the Philippines, we have things called sari-sari stores, and the way that I explain it to people who aren't familiar with that term is, they're very similar to what bodegas are in New York. They're like small community stores that would have everything that you could think of, so that you wouldn't have to venture far to buy a necessity like bread or like cooking oil or a bar of soap. And so there are these tiny stores, but they're also kind of like community spots. And we had a sari sari store growing up, and I would watch it in the summers, especially along with my other cousins, and that's kind of how we grew up. And we grew up and learned about life and being generous and understanding the things that people needed, and just knowing and figuring out the best ways to provide that service for everyone.
Oh my goodness,
And
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I keep thinking about your job now. You get, first of all, you get to write about your experiences as a child and share those, opportunities for, children who are not Filipino to kind of have that window into your culture and your background and your childhood. But then you also have a role teaching. You're an instructor, creative writing instructor for kids and teens and grown-ups. And is that in New York City?
yes, so I started pre-pandemic, so I was teaching in New York City and also in Westchester. And then now I'm able to reach more kids because most of my classes have shifted online, and so I'm
Mm,
able to teach wherever Rightopia, which is the organization I work for, teaches.
that's
So I've had kids from everywhere now, which is wonderful.
I think that's amazing too, because a lot of people will say, well, how does a writer bring in income? And it's not always just through book sales. It's through doing other things. Hopefully if you can make it where you're doing other things you love. I've met some authors who are, moonlighting as an author, but during the day they are an attorney or, a teacher.
Yeah,
But you get to have that writing space in all aspects of your life, and I think that's really exciting. So,
yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun
what
working with kids and like hearing their ideas about what the world should be and what they're excited about. I think it always teaches me so many things as well.
what next? What is next for Sophia Lee? Do you have books that you are currently submitting? You don't have to tell us about those books because I know they're top secret, but what are you currently working on?
I feel like I'm always working on so many things. Um, I'm working on a picture book manuscript that, I think deals with a question that I also started to deal with during the pandemic, which is, how to approach um, graying hair. It's like I'm at that age where, that's slowly starting to happen, and I wanted
Look
to
at
look at it
me.
from,
You nailed
yeah,
it.
I'm the same. And like, because my hair is like shockingly black, like, so you could really see it coming
Yeah.
through. And then I was just transported to memories of seeing my aunts and my mother panicking about those grays and how they were going to hide it, and I wanted to revisit those moments from the eyes of a child, and like, how do I tell that story, and how do I tell, I don't know, like a mother who was worried about that one other thing, that they're beautiful regardless.
Mhm.
And so that's something that I'm kind of figuring out right now. I'm also in the middle of revising a young adult novel that is about food in the Philippines. And then there are other things that I can't talk about yet, but those are two
Wonderful.
that like I'm currently working on and I'm really excited about.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story and your journey with our listeners. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. We are here every single Tuesday with a new interview, listening to creative ways that writers get their books and their messages into the world. Thank you so much, Sophia.
Thank you so much, Maria.
If this episode resonated with you, let's take it a step further. Head over to cardinalrulepress.com and check out our blog. It is filled with resources for anyone who loves books, whether you are a publisher, a librarian, a bookseller, or an author. We help you to figure out ways to get visibility around those books. Thanks for listening to All the Right Marketing with Maria Dismondy. If there is a topic you would like us to explore and cover, please email podcast@cardinalrulepress.com. Head over to our website, cardinalrulepress.com, to sign up for our monthly newsletter where you can learn more tips on getting books visible into the market. Last but not least, follow us on Instagram for a daily dose of all things books. If you enjoyed this episode, rate and review or share with a friend or colleague. Thanks so much.